Well, hello, I'm Joe Walensky, and I'm the host of this program, which is Digital Accessibility, the people behind the progress. And I'm happy to be meeting with another professional from the accessibility area. And today I'm talking with Ben Ogilvie. Hello, Ben. How are you doing today?
Doing very well, Joe. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for being part of this. And I'm talking from my home office on a rainy afternoon in Bellingham, Washington, which is about 80 miles north of Seattle. Where are you talking to us from?
I am close to my home in Westport, Connecticut, about an hour and change northeast of New York City.
All right, well, it's glad to have you part of this program, and it's always fun to learn how people found their way into what they're doing now. So why don't we just start there? Or if you could talk a little bit about the work that you're currently involved with, and then you kind of go back in time and let us know a little bit about how that evolved.
Sure. So right now, I wear a few different hats. In my day job, I'm director of accessibility strategy for ArcTouch, which is a custom software design and development agency. We're underneath WPP, which is a global holding company for marketing, advertising, and creative agencies. And so in the day to day, I talk with clients about how and why to invest in and build products from an accessibility first standpoint, and kind of meet them where they are in their level of maturity and help them move to the next step in the products we're working on building with them. And then separately, I'm also on the board of directors of the Global Accessibility Awareness Day Foundation as the first vice chair. And I help run the monthly Accessibility New York City meetup in Manhattan.
Well, we just finished up with the Global Awareness Day. So, how's it
Yeah.
feeling now that it's a little bit in the rearview mirror?
It was fantastic. This was our 15th year of GAAD. And so we have hosted events in New York, London, and Bengaluru, India. And I was in London to help run the event there, along with one of GAAD's co-founders, Jemison Asuncion. And we had a fantastic turnout, lots of great conversations, lots of great professionals and aspiring professionals coming together to just celebrate GAAD and talk about the impact it's had in the ways that they have helped move accessibility forward within their organizations, and looking forward to what's next. It was great, and we had great turnouts in New York and India as well. So
Well,
it was
it
really
is a
great,
great,
and looking forward to the next 15.
it is a great event. I've enjoyed when I've produced some things for that, but also just clicking in and checking out all the things from people around the world to see what
Mhm.
they're up to with accessibility. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is. This work can be uh, hard work and sometimes lonely, depending on what kind of organization you're working in. And so it's good to have those times to come together with other people in the community and be in a room with folks who are all trying to row in the same direction and all kind of facing similar challenges, and be able to share best practices and connect with folks on that level.
Well, what was your path to getting to where you are today? We all have different backgrounds that led us here. What was it like for you?
Yeah. I got thrown into the deep end learning about accessibility in 2009. I was working for Apple at the time, out in California, and I got a phone call as I was starting my shift one day that my dad had been training for a bicycling race for his 60th birthday. He came around a corner in the neighborhood where I grew up and collided with the delivery truck, and became quadriplegic. And so I flew home from California to Houston, to help retrofit his computer so that he could keep his job. And it was way harder than it should have been. I managed to kind of put things together with duct tape and baling wire and built some custom software on top of some off the shelf stuff so that he could do everything by voice to keep his job, which he was able to do for another 6 or 7 years till he chose to retire. But, I just went, boy, what do people do if they don't have a computer nerd on call in the family to do this? This shouldn't be this hard. Something that's already life altering shouldn't also necessarily be career ending, but it nearly was for him. So that was my kind of suddenly being made aware of this space that I had, with a technology background and as a hobbyist software developer, had never kind of had visibility and insight into. So I stayed at Apple for a few more years after that, but decided I was more on the like retail operations and IT support side of the house, and decided I wanted to be closer to building product. So I came in 2013 to ArcTouch, which at the time was about a 20-something person iOS and Android engineering shop, and was kind of doing. I came in as a product manager, but was doing like stealth accessibility around the edges. As long as nobody had questions about timeline or budget, like how could I make things a little bit better as I continued to build up the skill set myself. And then a few years after that, my wife and I had our first son, and he was born with a brain injury and epilepsy. And so suddenly I found myself bookended, with people on both sides of me and my family that kind of were going to interact with the world differently than folks in the middle of the bell curve. And I went back to my management and said, hey, like I need to be doing this work in some capacity. I can't be doing it on the side anymore. And I don't know if there's space for me to do that here. Or if I need to go to one of the other accessibility consulting firms or what have you. And the co-founders of the company said, we'll make space. They pulled me off of all my other projects and gave me time and space to build a team and a program around how do we do the same kind of custom design and development of experiences for mobile apps and web and IoT and wearables and whatever, but how do we do it with accessibility as a core pillar of the product from strategy and inception through design and development and everything else. And so I've been doing that for the last almost 7 years within kind of the types of projects that we work on at ArcTouch.
Well, yeah, I really appreciate you sharing these just so difficult personal challenges, and it really brings sight. It just brings things into even clearer focus about the value of this work that we're doing. In your particular situation, you obviously felt driven to move further into accessibility. But if you could talk a little bit more about your own experiences, how challenging was it? I mean, we all know it's challenging, but uh, sometimes it helps to hear what the reality of things are with all the work.
Yeah, I think I will say that I do find myself really fortunate that I mentioned the leadership response when I came back and said I need to be doing this work and I don't know if I can do that here, and their response to me in kind of wholeheartedly saying basically we've got your back, and go figure it out. Um, that consistent support I recognize is very rare. Um, for But I also get a lot of the headwinds. Like every business has competing priorities and timelines are always tight and things like that. So, especially when I'm working with clients who don't have, there might be one person within the organization who is trying to champion accessibility. They've come to us to build a mobile app, and we've managed to connect on the fact that, hey, accessibility is not a compliance exercise for us. Like it's part of the foundation of the way that we approach product, involving users with disabilities at every stage of the product life cycle, is kind of core to the DNA. Getting that buy-in up the leadership chain on their side often is challenging. And so we get, while I've had consistent support within my leadership, again, I recognize that's really rare. And working both with clients that we have at ArcTouch, with other members of the community, within the Accessibility in New York City meetup, or within folks we're talking to through the GAAD Foundation. I feel that there's the people who have like direct experience, either through personal lived experience or through a loved one who's either been, coming to disability at some point during their life, either permanently or situationally, temporarily. Like, their light bulb is already on. But one of the things that I've found most impactful in the way that I approach connecting with people and storytelling is that in the cases where they haven't had that light bulb moment yet, let them borrow yours. Let them borrow that connection, or that ability to bridge from like a compliance standpoint, or seeing it as like a cost that they have to throw money at to keep from getting sued. Like, that's the worst way to approach accessibility. But it's a constant challenge for sure, to kind of get people to that point of awareness and recognition of both the human value of the work and the business value of the work. So that's really a lot of what my job is finding the right path to like what is my direct client, or what is their leadership held accountable to, and how does accessibility ladder up to and support that, versus feel like it's something that is separate from helping them achieve their goals in reaching their audience, retaining their users, maximizing their reach, building brand goodwill, whatever those things are. I think my job is to just help find those points of connection and help humanize the work, so that it doesn't get put aside or deprioritized when push comes to shove and timelines get tight and all that.
Well, it is wonderful that you were in such a supportive and progressive environment, and hopefully we just continue to see more of that grow and evolve over time. And education and learning from others is a big part of that. Is there anything coming up in your work that or volunteerism that you're excited about, new developments or challenges that you've been thinking about that you'd like to share?
I think one of the things that I'm pretty excited about recently is, of course, like every company, we're looking at ways that we can leverage AI to do stuff better, faster, more consistently, whatever it is. And there's different sides to that coin. And I know that a lot of folks in the disability and accessibility space are rightfully cautious about AI potentially widening the divide or reinforcing biases and all of those things. And there's certainly valid concerns there. But one of the ways that we've found within our design work at ArcTouch that I'm really excited about is when we're in those early design, like the fast moving design sprints, we've always found it challenging for designers to get timely feedback, specifically from blind and low vision users in those design sprints, because Figma inherently is not accessible, where a lot of design happens, where prototypes are created. But we recently built out a pipeline to be able to consume our Figma designs and design systems um, and our accessibility annotations for the design system, and basically take a prototype in Figma and convert it to an iOS and Android build, um, basically within a couple of hours. That is semantically accessible. It's not going to be production quality code. It's not designed for that, but the goal is to be accessible and navigable enough that we can get actual usability feedback on that experience, basically within those fast moving design sprints. So we basically took what could have been what was previously a 3 or 4 week process of taking a design and building an accessible app version of it, and cut it down to like 3 hours, so that we can actually do usability testing with blind users at the same time that we're putting that Figma prototype in front of sighted users, to get feedback and make adjustments to the user experience and make changes to the designs at the time when that's happening, not weeks later. So I'm really excited about that as kind of a key unlock, that we recently built out to be able to get that real tangible and impactful usability feedback from screen reader users, as early as possible in the design process. So that's one thing I'm jazzed about. The other is kind of switching over to uh, wearing my GAAD Foundation hat. Last year, we released a benchmark called the AI Model Accessibility Checker, or AMAC for short, which takes a look at the different uh, kind of foundation and frontier AI models from OpenAI and Google and Anthropic and other players, and looks at how accessible is the code being generated by those models by default, because a lot of engineers, many engineers, our engineers at ArcTouch and everywhere else, are using AI models to build code faster. But if those models are not being prompted by the engineer to say, "Hey, make this, by the way, like do your best to make this accessible," then they're just regenerating inaccessible stuff by default, and just compounding that issue. So Joe Devon, who's the other founder of Global Accessibility Awareness Day, led the charge on building this AI benchmark, so that the foundation model developers can take a look and compete on whose model can generate more accessible code by default without necessarily being asked by the engineer to do it. So we're seeing gains and improvements as those benchmarks come out, model over model. We're seeing some of the model developers actually do better and better on that benchmark, which is really exciting to me as well.
Well, let me just touch on both of those pieces that you mentioned, with the former on your ability to come up with that system for prototyping. I think that's one that is widely a challenge, especially so many places using Figma and wanting to do what you said in terms of designers having more effective in-stream accessibility testing. But that sounds like it'd be a great conference case study right there. I'm sure there are a lot of challenges there, but um, what was it like trying to put that together? Because these things are never trivial.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the foundational pieces that we built that solution on top of was, for a number of years, in the creative agency context, every client has their own kind of brand guidelines, their own design language, maybe their own design system, maybe not. And we kept finding ourselves, when we'd start a new project with clients, looking at a blank canvas and needing to design every kind of custom design everything based on their technology stack, based on whether they were building things pure Swift and Kotlin for iOS and Android, or if they were using a cross-platform framework like Flutter, or if they're doing web and mobile and wanted those two to be consistent. All of those things. So that was a challenge that we kept facing, since the beginning of doing the work that we do. So we had, over a few years, built up our own internal kind of uh, design system primitives and kind of a starter pack. So if the client didn't come to us with their own design system and components already built. We had something that we could start from that was easily adaptable to their brand guidelines, but also already had our accessibility annotations and kind of testing approach baked into it. And so we had that both in Figma and the paired developed components in GitHub, that we could use as kind of the foundation of starting a project. And so that was the, 60 to 70% of that pipeline we built out was trained and consuming through an MCP server we built, those things that we built out, to be able to produce that accessible prototype quickly and in a way that we felt good enough. Again, we wouldn't ship it to production that way necessarily, but it was good enough for the level of fidelity we needed for testing. So there was a lot of investment and time that went into that, over several years to get us to the point where we went, hey, we could use AI to really take us the last mile here and build this out. And now we're working with clients to do the same. If they already have their existing design system and component library, we're basically building out a similar pipeline for them inside their infrastructure, to be able to give them that capability for that rapid accessible prototyping within their kind of ecosystem.
Well, thanks for that mini story. There's a load of great information there. I think I'm going to have to play this back 2 or 3 times for myself just to take a lot of notes. But thanks for all that
Yeah.
detail. And then moving over to the portion where you're talking about the model benchmarks. Is that something that is a place where the community can contribute to that? We can put some links in the show notes, but kind of how is that organized in terms of evolving over time?
Yeah. Right now, it's designed with the intent. It's not really a benchmark meant for end product teams to use. It really is designed to give that feedback back to the Anthropics and OpenAIs and Googles of the world. But we've found that just relatively recently, the last few models from OpenAI have actually achieved a perfect score on the benchmark, which tells us that we need to make a more robust benchmark. And so we're looking at, right now, what we're doing is testing HTML. We'd like to look at, is there a way to provide a similar benchmark for native app code? It's testing using the Axe Core accessibility rules that are open source from DQ. And so it's the things that can be tested in a pretty straightforward way with automation, with kind of binary yes or no, pass fail kinds of criteria. So the next iteration of the benchmark, we're looking at how do we make it test things that are a little more nuanced or a little more based on user experience and not just kind of the set of WCAG criteria that are non-ambiguous, so that we can kind of continue to raise the bar for those models. And so I think if folks are interested in getting involved in that, contributing to that, email info@gaad.foundation. That's GAAD.foundation. And they can speak with Joe Devon to look at ways that we might be able to collaborate there to help build the next version of the benchmark. I do have to say that the entire benchmark was supported by ServiceNow. That they help support the foundation in building up that benchmark, and so that that contribution from ServiceNow, like that investment in open sourcing accessibility knowledge and open sourcing the kinds of levers and influence and impact at scale, is so aligned with the way the GAAD Foundation is structured, of trying to change the culture of software and digital product development to make accessibility a core requirement. And we look for those areas to, how do we scale that impact beyond just the one day of Global Accessibility Awareness Day, how do we make that a year-round thing, and how do we influence those levels, those layers of the technology stacks, where we can have the most influence to drive not just awareness but action and accountability.
Well, I mean that whole topic area is extremely interesting to me as well. So I definitely want to learn more about it, read about it. It definitely seems like it's going to provide some great value, and as did this conversation. So it's just great to well to to hear your story, your live life story, and also the interesting things going on through your company and volunteerism. So thanks so much for taking the time to share all this with this program. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, Joe. Thanks again for having me. It's been great to talk to you.
All right, thanks a lot. Bye bye.